Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I took a deep breath because, in Genesis, there's a lot to talk about, including the breath that God put in human lungs. So we're going to go ahead and go to Bereshit chapter 1, and we're going to go through chapter 6 and verse 8. We're also going to cover Yeshayahu or Isaiah chapter 40. This is a very messianic text in nature. And we're also going to go over John 1 because John 1 gives us a bit more context about the beginning and more of a Hebraic outlook on what Ehad, or the unity between Father and Son, actually looks like. So if I can go ahead and present my screen here, I will. Let's go ahead and go to the book of Genesis, and we'll start in chapter 1 and verse 1. And give me a minute because sometimes it takes a second to pull this up on my computer. It can be a bit slow at times, but let's go ahead and get started. And just 1 second, queuing screen. I need a producer, but I don't have one, so that's okay. Let's see right here, share screen. And let's do the one right next to this one. So thank you for tuning in. If you're tuning in on TikTok, I really appreciate that. And let's get started. Here we go. It says, in the beginning, or actually better translated, in a beginning, because that's what it says in Hebrew, because what was before this beginning? Well, Elohim. In a beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the spirit of Elohim was hovering over the waters. So even though the spirit was not imparted en masse until Acts chapter 2, the spirit still existed. And Elohim said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Elohim saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. So we have light and darkness before we even have sun and moon. Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So this was a dichotomy that existed before that. And there was evening and there was morning the first day. Now, there are different interpretations as to what Genesis chapter 1 and verse 5 actually means, because some people have different definitions for what the days are supposed to look like. I'll go ahead and cover that in a separate video. And Elohim said, "Let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water." So if you look at Hebraic cosmology, that's not what we see in the NASA model or the modern day scientific models. We don't see a vault between the waters. We don't see, and it says, "And God made the vault." Elohim made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above it, and it was so. And he called the vault sky, and there was evening and there was morning the first day. And then he says, this is an as above, so below, as it states in other parts of the scripture. And Elohim said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear." And it was so. Elohim called the dry ground land and called the waters seas. And Elohim saw that it was good. And we're going to get to the vault again. So everything is good up to this point. Then Elohim said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds." And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seed according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And Elohim saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning the third day. And Elohim said, "Let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs." So he says, in the vault of the sky. So this is not what we see in our modern day textbooks. In our modern day textbooks, we see sun and moon being far away from the earth. And let them serve as signs to mark the sacred times and days and years. And this is the verse where much of the calendar debates actually stem from. And then he says, "And let them be lights in the vault of the sky. He didn't say a million miles, 5 million miles from us, in the vault of the sky, within the sky. And I actually had a philosophy class where, take care. I don't even know how to describe it at this point. I mean, I had a philosophy class where there was a philosophy teacher, and he ended up making fun of this idea of biblical cosmology. Oh, no, this is just speaking metaphorically. But when Elohim speaks of his creation, he doesn't speak of it metaphorically, and that includes the days in which it took to create the earth. These are literal days. Yom, the Hebrew word, can have two different meanings. It can refer to a day, or it can refer to an era. And it's used differently depending on the context. But here in Genesis, we have 7 literal days. Here it says, let's see. Okay, Elohim made the 2 lights, the greater light to govern the day, so that's the sun, and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. Elohim set them in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And Elohim saw that it was good, and there was evening and there was morning the 4th day. And Elohim said, let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky. So Elohim created the great creatures of the sea and every living thing with which water teems and that moves about in it, according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. So again, everything is good up until this point. Elohim blessed them and said, be fruitful and increase in the number and increase in number and fill the water in the seas and let the birds increase on the earth. So first he told the sea animals and the birds that they needed to be fruitful before we even get to humanity. And he says, and it says, this is Moses, and there was evening and there was morning the 5th day. And Elohim said, let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds. So we have macroevolution theory. We have different ideas that different creatures can become different creatures. But biblically speaking, every creature produces after its own kind. Dogs for dogs, cats for cats, mice for mice, lions for lions. There is no macroevolution, just microevolution. Different changes in characteristics in order to adapt to specific environments. So it says the livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, and the wild animals, each according to its own kind. And it was so. Elohim made the wild animals according to their kinds. So again, another according to their kinds, each one. There's no intermixing. And it was so. It says Elohim made, and Elohim saw that it was good. So every creature that moves along the ground, too, according to their kinds. Then Elohim said, let us make mankind in our image. So a clear plurality exists in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 26. Let us. Okay, there's a plurality in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky. Now, many people say they'll still make different claims. Oh, these are angels with Elohim. They'll make different claims. We're going to see, according to the Brit Hadashah, and even I have some logical arguments against this claim. We're going to go ahead and take a look at that as soon as we get there. And it says, over the livestock and all the wild animals and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So he gave us dominion. We get free will in how we exercise that dominion. So you think about it. One thing you can do is you can take a dog to the veterinarian and have it put down. That's an example of exercising dominion over the animals. In verse 27, it says, so Elohim created mankind in his own image. In the image of Elohim, he created them, male and female, he created them. So we're going to see, we started off in the image of Elohim. In verse 28, it says, Elohim blessed them and said to them, Be fruitful and increase in number. So he told the animals this first. Now he's telling the humans, at least the animals that were just the birds and the sea creatures, because the rest of them don't come along until later. He says, rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Then Elohim said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food, or in some translations it says meat, because Elohim, we were essentially what we would call vegans to start off with. Elohim gave us the plants to eat. Of course, it didn't always stick this like this. We weren't always going to be vegans. Just in the very beginning, Elohim only gave us the plants. Now, this is an argument that's used for promoting mandated veganism. That's a whole other video. We don't believe in that here. We don't believe in mandated diets like veganism. This is just simply Elohim saying, look, you can draw from the produce of the ground, and that's going to be your food. In verse 30, it says, and to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food. So we humans were given plants for food, and it was so. Elohim saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. So we don't see a mention of Adam until later on. It says, thus the heavens and the earth were completed in their vast array. Now, keep this in mind. The Torah isn't written exactly in chronological order. So in Genesis 1, we saw the creation of humanity. In Genesis 2, though, we get more into detail about the male and female dichotomy and how it actually came about. So sometimes you might have something more vague or abstract towards the front end of the scriptures, and then something that actually clarifies it later on. So it says, by the seventh day, Elohim had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. So here's the Shabbat. Here's the Sabbath. No, I'm not reading all of Genesis. For those of you on TikTok, we're reading chapter 1 and verse 1 through chapter 6 and verse 8, when we're going to complement the Haftarah and the New Testament. It says, then Elohim blessed or sanctified the seventh day and made it holy. He made it set apart. He made it Kodesh, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. This is the account of the heavens and the earth when they were created, when Yahweh Elohim made the earth and the heavens. So it's reflecting on the past, what we just went over. Now no shrub had yet appeared on earth, and no plant had sprung up, for Yahweh Elohim had not sent rain on the earth, and there was no one to work the ground. Okay, so this comes along later. But streams came up from the earth and watered the whole surface of the ground. Then Yahweh Elohim formed a man, or Adam, ruddy red Adam. Adam has a connotation of being red. From the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And the man became a living being. Now Yahweh Elohim had planted a garden in the east, in Eden. So clearly Elohim manifested himself in a way that he himself planted the garden. So we see he planted a garden, or potentially even from the throne, he could have just brought this garden about, because he can do anything. And there he put the man he had formed. So he placed him right in that spot. Yahweh Elohim made all kinds of trees grow out of the ground, trees that were pleasing to the eye and good for food. So we see pleasing to the eye, potentially lust of the eyes, right there. We talk about lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, pride of life. These are three elements that we see play out in Genesis with the Adam and the creation story. And this is a hint or a remez in Hebrew that gets us to that point. And it says, in the middle of the garden were the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. A river watering the garden flowed from Eden, or Eden. From there it was separated into 4 headwaters. The name of the first is Pishon, or Pishon. It winds through the entire land of Havilah, where there is gold. The gold of that land is good. Aromatic resin and onyx are also there. The name of the second river is Gihon. It winds through the entire land of Cush. The name of the third river is Tigris. It runs along the east side of Ashur. And the fourth river is the Euphrates. Yahweh Elohim took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. Okay, so what was the first mission given to Ha-Adam? It was to tend to the garden, and we are built genetically to tend gardens. Maybe less so in our fallen, fragmented state. A lot of us live these days in metropolitan areas, so it's harder to garden. Some people do what's called urban homesteading. That is a real thing. And so that's what Yahweh put us on the earth to do urban homesteading, to grow our own food, to grow our own plants, to tend the ground and to take care of it. And Yahweh Elohim commanded the man, you are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For the day that you eat of it, you will certainly die. You will certainly die. And this is where the Hebrew word yam is used, but of course it's used in a different context. It didn't mean literal day, because we'll find out later that Adam lived almost 1,000 years, and we'll unpack that more in another video. So then it says, and Yahweh Elohim said, sorry about my hair, it's getting in the way. It is not good for man to be alone. I will make an ezer kegnedo, or helper, suitable for him. So what do we have? Now Yahweh Elohim, this is his attempt to give Adam a companion, had formed out of the ground all the wild animals and all the birds in the sky. And he brought them to the man to see what he would name them, and whatever the man would call each living creature, that was its name. So the man gave the names to all the livestock and the birds in the sky and all the wild animals. And then from these animals, what do we see? But for Ha-Adam, for Adam, no helper suitable was found. No helper. Not someone that could match him, not someone that could be his rescuer, not someone that could aid him. Right? So what does Yahweh do? So Yahweh Elohim caused the man to fall into a sleep. And while he was sleeping, the androgynous Adam, the Adam who had every component of flesh, both male and female flesh at this time, and while he was sleeping, he took one of the man's sides. It says ribs, but it's better translated sides, Selah, sides, and then closed up the place with flesh. Then Yahweh made a woman from the side that he had taken out of the man. So it's very clear that the flesh of the woman, the parts of the woman, were already in Adam when Yahweh took them out. And he brought her to the man. Excuse me, sorry about the breathing. The man said, this is now bone of my bones, because she came from him completely. Yahweh didn't take a ball of flesh and then make a woman fully. He took the parts and made a woman. And flesh of my flesh, she shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man. So you have man and woman, the very similar terms. That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh through the consummation. They consummate the marriage. And Adam and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame. So let's go to Genesis chapter 3. Now the serpent, and this serpent remains unidentified in the scriptures, was more crafty than any of the wild animals Yahweh Elohim had made. He said to the woman, did Elohim really say, you must not eat from any tree in the garden. So getting people to doubt God right off the bat. The woman said to the serpent, we may eat fruit from the trees in the garden. But Elohim did say, you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die. Because if you touch it, you will be tempted to eat it. And I may have accidentally sent an invite here on TikTok. Did not mean to do that. For Elohim knows, he says, you will not certainly die. So doubt Elohim. He didn't mean it when he said you would die. For Elohim knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. So knowing good and evil, a good and evil actually, though, that is of her own making. Because Elohim already said it was evil to eat from the tree. Violating his instruction is what we would consider evil, but the devil is saying, you get to define your own moral boundaries. Once you eat this, you'll see that. And it says, when the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, so lust of the eyes, and desirable for gaining wisdom, so the idolatry of intellect, she took some and ate it. Well, and wisdom too is usually demonstrated through action, but she wanted the knowledge. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. Why? Well, you guys are probably thinking, why did Adam eat the apple? Or not the apple, but the fruit. Sorry. Many people assume it's an apple, but it's not. And I said that because it's so popular. In the culture, it's so unbelievably popular to think that, especially with your Apple iPhones, you got the apple symbol in the back, the half-eaten apple. But, you know, if Adam didn't eat the apple or the fruits, oh gosh, let's get that out of our vocabulary, please. He ate the fruit because otherwise, how are you going to mate? If you're in a glorified body and your mate is not, your mate has sinned. So we see that Adam eats the fruit. Then the eyes of both of them were open, and they realized that they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. Then the man and his wife heard the sound of Yahweh Elohim as he was walking in the garden in the cool of day. So Yahweh walked in the garden probably on 2 feet. There was a manifestation. And they hid from Yahweh Elohim among the trees of the garden. But Yahweh Elohim called to the man, where are you? Okay, so he's trying to stay away from potentially a mediated version of Yahweh, right? Because you can't see the full glory of Yahweh and live according to the Torah. So mediated glory of Yahweh. So he answered, I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. And in verse 11, it says, and he said, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from? The man said, the woman put here with me. She gave me some fruit from the tree, and I ate it. And first thing, make an excuse, right? It was the woman's fault. Then Yahweh Elohim said to the woman, what is this you have done? And the woman said, the serpent deceived me, and I ate. So Ha'adam blames the woman. The woman blames the serpent. And there's a lot of noise disruption because the cat is scratching the post. So I blame the cat for the noise disruption. So Yahweh Elohim said to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and all wild animals. So more implications for the serpent than anybody else. You will crawl on your belly and you will eat dust. Eat dust. Man was formed. You know, it's interesting because people will take this verse and there are other references that refer to man as dust. He says, you will eat dust all the days of your life. So he is constantly trying to devour men. In Kifa Aleph, 1 Peter, we read, beware of your adversary, the devil, for he prowls around like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. Elohim gave him this role in the book of Genesis. And it says, and I will put enmity between you and the woman, so the serpent and the woman, between your seed and hers. Now, people use this verse and they say, well, serpent seed doctrine. Okay, Satan has a literal bloodline. But be mindful. Plenty of times in the Pauline epistles, in the scriptures, in the letters, in the Brit Hadashah, Elohim's seed is described as those who follow him, even in the book of Yochanan or John. Therefore, it would make sense to interpret this verse as the devil has his own seed, but his own seed are the people who choose to follow him. The devil's seed are the people who follow him. They are not people who are his literal reproduced offspring. He does not have bloodline offspring, but he has had plenty of people who have served him, who have served this world, who have served the systems. And so here's what it says. We read a messianic prophecy right off the bat. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. So he will crush your head. So this messianic figure will ultimately defeat the serpent, who is Yahweh's adversary, who is also our adversary, because Yahweh wants one family of man to come together and to worship him, and the serpent is opposed to anything that is remotely close to that, or even that. Yahweh wants us to operate harmonically with him, and Hasatan has always had this goal of defeating that. And it says, and you will strike his heel. So therefore, the strike that Satan does to humankind is much less painful than the strike that the Messiah causes him, the pain that the Messiah causes him through his crucifixion, because God had an ultimate plan to reconcile us. So it says, to the woman, he said, I will make your pain. So here's where we get the gender roles, right? So we wonder, where do biblical gender roles come from? Well, they're in Genesis. To the woman, he said, I will make your pains in childbearing very severe. With painful labor, you will give birth to your children, or to children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. So Yahweh gives the man the dominion. He gives the man the priesthood. He gives the man the say over the household. And it says, to Ha-Adam, he said, because you listened to your wife instead of me, and ate fruit from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat from it. Cursed is the ground because of you. So to Adam, through painful toil, you will eat food from it all the days of your life. Through painful toil. So to Adam, he says, by the sweat of your brow, you're going to work for this food. Adam, you are the man. You will provide for your household, but I'm going to make it a painful process. And it says, it will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field by the sweat of your brow. Right there. So Adam's going to have to work hard for his family. You will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken, for dust you are. Okay, so Satan eats dust, remember? So Adam is referred to as dust. Satan eats dust, and to dust you will return. So simply Adam will die. Adam named his wife Eve, or Hava, because she would be the mother of all the living. In verse 21, Yahweh Elohim made garments of skin for Adam and his wife and clothed them. So we see immediately that animal skins provide the covering. Animals provide in Vayikra or Leviticus, a major theme of that book is that the animals provide a covering for the sins of Israel. So we immediately see in Genesis Yahweh's desire to use animals, not to make total, not in the same way that the Messiah makes full atonement for all time, but in a way that covers the sins of the people. And Yahweh Elohim said, the man has now become like one of us, knowing good and evil. One of us, right? So keep in mind the plurality here. One's talking to the other. He must not be allowed to reach out his hand to take also from the tree of life and eat, because then he'd become immortal and live forever. So Yahweh Elohim banished him from the Garden of Eden to work the ground from which he had been taken. After he drove the man out, he placed on the east side of the Garden of Eden cherubim, so angelic beings, and a flaming sword flashing back and forth to guard the way to the tree of life. So he banished us from the garden, and I'm sure it's a location that has actually dissipated. Of course, by this point, we're about 5,785 years or so down the line. So Genesis 4, we read, Ha-Adam made love to his wife Eve, Hava. So they consummated their marriage, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain, or Cain. She said, with the help of Yahweh, I have brought forth a man. Later, she gave birth to his brother Abel, or Havel. Now Abel kept flocks, and Cain worked the soil. So Cain performed more of Adam's role, and Abel did something a little bit different. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to Yahweh. And Havel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. Yahweh looked with favor on Havel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering, he did not look on with favor. So Cain was very angry and his face was downcast. Well, Yahweh essentially sacrificed 2 animals to get the animal skins for Adam and Eve. So we know already that he would appreciate the first fruits, of an animal, the best of the animals, and not just your own choice or what you think is first fruits. He wants the best of the best. And it's very clear he wanted animals from the beginning. And so now he's getting the animals. And so Havel is the one being appreciated and commended by Yahweh. Then Yahweh said to Cain, why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? And by the way, when I say Cain and Havel, I'm talking about the Hebrew names. If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at the door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. So Yahweh immediately talks about the desires of our flesh. So for Cain, he already has. So it's interesting because sin is crouching at the door. So Cain already had this desire to kill his brother, this desire that was manifesting in his flesh. So we see this desire to overcome the evil that is in us, So Cain didn't do a good job with this. It says, now Cain said to his brother Havel, there's a very specific Hebrew term for this great evil called the flesh that we must overcome. It says, now Cain said to his brother Havel, let's go out to the field. While they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Havel and killed him. And then Yahweh said to Cain, where is your brother Havel? I don't know, he replied. Am I my brother's keeper? So we have a theme in Genesis. So Shaul tells us in the Galatians that we are to watch out and to keep each other as brothers, Galatians chapter 6. And Shaul is saying this reflecting upon what Yahweh wanted from the beginning, which is for Havel and Cain to safeguard, protect, and care for each other. So he's probably asking this rhetorically because he knows what Yahweh has asked us to do. Yahweh said, what have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. So Yahweh can smell the blood. He knows that vengeance is being sought after, or that vengeance is necessary. That doesn't mean he'll act upon it, but he can sense it based on the blood. I mean, you see the blood of the saints in Revelation doing the same act of symbolically crying out. Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. So he's saying this in the sense that the blood was essentially soaked into the ground. So Adam is ruddy. He's red, bloody. He comes from the ground. So blood comes from the ground. It also goes back to the ground. we think of the ground as like a reddish color, at least the original ground in the garden. So here we go. He says, when you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth. So Cain is under a worse curse than Ha-Adam. So Ha-Adam will work and reap the benefits of his work, but Cain is not guaranteed. He's not guaranteed the same fortune. And I'm sorry about the water noise in the background and the food noise. Cain said to Yahweh, my punishment is more than I can bear. I mean, this is unbearable for him because he's just like, man, I'm not going to reap any benefits now. Today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. So there were other people potentially on the planet besides Cain and Havel. And the reason probably is because, there isn't an account in the scriptures, but it's kind of like a Cliff Notes version. It's like a Cliff Notes version of everything. And so chances are Adam and Eve had reproduced several times, and it's not explicitly discussed in canon. And that's fine. That does not mean, though, and I'm warning you against this, that does not mean you should consult with the apocryphal texts to try to find answers on things like this, because a lot of the apocryphal texts already have problems and flaws of their own. So then it says, let's see if we can go down here. In verse 15, it says, but Yahweh said to him, not so. Anyone, meaning there's other people on the planet, plane, at least the plane of the earth. Be careful with the term planet. It has different connotations. It has interesting connotations. It can have different meanings. Not so. Anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over. Then Yahweh put a mark on Cain so that no one who found him would kill him. He seals the 144,000 in Revelation. So Yahweh operates in marks as a form of protection. And there's a theme of that as well in Deuteronomy. And once we get to those Torah portions, we'll also be able to discuss more of that in detail, and potentially if we do an end times series. So it says, so Cain went out from Yahweh's presence and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Then it says, Cain made love to his wife. So Cain had relations with his wife, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Enoch. Cain was then building a city, and he named it after his son Enoch. No, this is not the author of the so-called book Enoch, so let's be careful with that. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad was the father of Mehujael. Mehujael was the father of Methushael, and Methushael the father of Lamech. Lamech married 2 women. Okay, so what do we have here? Lamech married 2 women. So we have the start of polyamory, so to speak. So chances are Yahweh already permitted polyamory at this point, and we don't see a description of that until the book of Exodus. And there are a lot of places in the scriptures where we have hints of different laws existing, and we don't find out explicitly until later on. It says, Adah gave birth to Jabal. He was the father of those who live in tents and raise livestock. His brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all who played stringed instruments and pipes. Zillah also had a son, Tubal-Cain, who forged all kinds of tools out of bronze and iron. Tubal-Cain's sister was Naamah. Lamech said to his wives, Adah and Zillah, listen to me. Wives of Lamech, hear my words. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for injuring me. If Cain is avenged 7 times, then Lamech 77 times. So Cain dies at the hands of Lamech. And so he's saying, all right, so I'll face the vengeance of 7 times. The person who comes after me will face the vengeance of 77 times. Okay, so what happened? So Cain killed Havel, and Cain ultimately got his fate, which was death. So since Adam and Eve's 2 main sons that are described here in the direct account are dead, they need someone else to be in line for the priesthood. And then, of course, there are theories about other humans existing at this time too. Of course, again, be careful about entertaining these through the Apocrypha. So it says she gave birth to a son and named him Seth. So Seth is the next in line for the priesthood, saying, Elohim has granted me another child in place of Havel, since Cain killed him. Seth also had a son and named him Enosh. At that time, people began to call on the name of Yahweh. So maybe before, it looks like before this point, people had. So it's interesting how we see that people began to call on his name. Up until this point, we see Elohim coming to them. Now we see that it looks like people are also turning back to him and coming to him. So in Genesis 5, this is the written account of Adam's family line. When Elohim created mankind, he made them in the likeness of Elohim. He created them male and female and blessed them. And, excuse my cough, and he named them mankind when they were created. When Adam, or Ha-Adam, had lived 130 years, he had a son in his own likeness and his own image, and he named him Seth. After Seth was born, Adam lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters, so more reproduction. Altogether, Adam lived a total of 930 years, so less than a yom. And I said the Epistle of Peter actually writes about this more in detail. And then he died. And Peter, Kepha, was keeping the Torah. So, at the end of the day, Kepha was writing about the front of the book. So it's interesting. When Adam lived 130 years, he had a son in his own likeness. So Yahweh created Adam and Eve in his likeness, but now that Adam is having more sons, they're in his likeness. Why? Because when we sinned against Yahweh, there our image, not that people are now no longer made in the image of God, but rather our image is now fragmented because we are no longer in perfect bodies. We are in a fallen state, and we are now in a fallen world. So we notice that genetically and in terms of image, like representation, humans are more modeled after themselves, because after the fall, we became separated from Elohim. We also became different. We became different we became different from Elohim in the sense that we didn't have immortality and we didn't have different features. So I'm trying to find the right term for this. I don't want to mess this up. So let's keep going. And it says, when Seth had lived 105 years, he became the father of Enosh. And after the father of Enosh, Seth lived 807 years. So notice, nobody lived past 1,000 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Seth lived a total of 912 years, and then he died. When Enosh had lived 90 years, he became the father of Canaan, Canaan. After he had become the father of Canaan, Enosh lived 815 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Enosh lived a total of 905 years, then died. When Canaan had lived 70 years, he became the father of Mahalalel. What? Yeah, I can a little bit. The father of Mahalalel. After he became the father of Mahalalel, Kenan lived 840 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Kenan lived a total of 910 years and then died. When Mahalalel lived 65 years, he became the father of Jared, or Yared. And I think we're going to have to save this for the next Torah portion, but maybe I want to pry deeper into Yared after talking about the Watchers. After he became the father of Yared, Mahalalel lived 830 years and had other sons and daughters. We didn't have a J till the 1500s, King James. So altogether, Mahalalel lived 895 years, and then he died. When Yared had lived 162 years, he became the father of Enoch. After he became the father of Enoch, Yared lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Yared lived a total of 962 years, and then he died. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah, and after became the father of Methuselah, Enoch walked faithfully with Elohim 300 years and had other sons and daughters. So Enoch His allegiance was to Elohim. Altogether, Enoch lived a total of 365 years. Enoch walked faithfully with Elohim, and then he was no more because Elohim took him away. So there was probably a harpazo or a violent snatching of some sort. Yahweh just removed him from the earth. This is not usual for Yahweh. He's not going to do this on a mass scale until, the very end. So the very, very end. And so we see that. And then it says when Methuselah had lived 187 years, so we don't have an account of Enoch writing Enoch. That's very clear. Methuselah lived 782 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Methuselah lived a total of 969 years, and he died. And another thing I want to do too is talk about the Watcher passages more in detail, maybe so this doesn't go too long at another time. And it says, when Lamech had lived 182 years, he had a son. He named him Noah and said, he will comfort us in the labor and painful toil of our hands caused by the ground Elohim or Yahweh has cursed. He will comfort us. After Noach was born, Lamech lived 595 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Lamech lived a total of 777 years, and then he died. After Noah was 500 years old, he became the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And this is the three major divisions of the different human races, ethnicities, nationalities, you name it. We'll see that in a later Torah portion. Now it says, when humans began to increase in number on the earth, and this is Genesis 6, and daughters were born to them. Then the sons of Elohim, the watchers, the angelic beings, saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then Elohim said, or Yahweh said, my spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days shall be 120 years. So Yahweh will not contend. He's like, we're stubborn, we're rebellious. He's not going to work with us for more than 120 years. So he put a cap on lifespan. Then it says the Nephilim, or in other words, in Hebrew, you can look it up. It means tyrant or bully, or, someone who's big, someone who's elite. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days. And also afterward, when the sons of Elohim, or the angels, went into the daughters of humans and had children by them, they were the heroes of old, the men of renown. And the Nephilim, they may have been big in size. They may have also been big in status. They were very well respected, because that's why they're called the men of renown. Then it says, then Yahweh saw how the great wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. So there was an instruction from Yahweh, and people wanted to go against it. Then Yahweh regretted, meaning he saw this creation. Maybe, he potentially learned some things as he was observing humankind and seeing how evil things were. So he regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. So Yahweh knows everything he can know, although once he saw the full manifestation of the evil on the earth, he wanted to get rid of humankind, except for the very faithful few. So Yahweh said, I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of Yahweh. So we just wrapped up our Torah portion. We're going to go to our Haftarah in Isaiah or Yeshayahu chapter 40, and we're going to go through verses 1 through 11. So our next Torah portion will be about Noach and the flood, and we'll talk about what that extends to exactly the next time. Let me see if I can Google this in that case. Let's go to Isaiah or Yeshayahu chapter 40, and we're going to go to the verses 1 through 11. Comfort all my people, says your Elohim. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem or Yerushalayim. and proclaim to her, personification, that her hard service has been completed, that her sin has been paid for or atoned for, and that she has received from Yahweh's hand double for all her sins. A voice of one calling, in the wilderness, prepare the way for Yahweh, and make straight in the desert a highway for our Elohim. So prepare for this manifestation. This is what John does in the Gospels. We'll have to do another whole series on that. And then there's another thing that I wanted to get to, but it slipped my mind. It says, every valley shall be raised up, every mountain and hill made low. World governments will be subdued. The rough ground shall become level, the rugged places a plain. And the glory of Yahweh will be revealed, and all the people will see it together, everybody, every eye. For the mouth of Yahweh has spoken. A voice says, cry out. And I said, what shall I cry? All people are like grass, and all their faithfulness is like the flowers of the field. The grass withers and the flowers fall, because the breath of Yahweh blows on them. Surely the people are grass. The grass withers and the flowers fall, but the word, in other words, the Torah or the Tanakh, the word of Elohim, endures forever. You who bring good news to Zion or Zion. So if you're a Zionist, right, the biblical definition of Zionism is Yahweh gathering his people to Zion and giving them rest and comfort and peace. Go up on a high mountain. You who are, and by his people, we mean the faithful followers. So that's why he says their faithfulness is like the flowers of the field. He adores them more than just the grass. You who bring good news to Jerusalem, lift up your voice with a shout. Lift it up. Do not be afraid. Say to the towns of Yehuda or Judah, here is your Elohim, or here is the manifestation of Elohim. See, the sovereign Yahweh, he is our sovereign, comes with power, and he rules with a mighty arm. See, and even it says this in the Brit Hadashah, his reward is with him, and his recompense accompanies him. Yeshua tells his people, my reward I bring with me. I bring a reward with me. He tends his flock like a shepherd. Okay, Yeshua tends his flock like a shepherd. And we're going to see how he's the manifestation of Elohim. Because he's not just a human divine agent. Rather, he is the manifestation fulfilling what Elohim said he would exactly do to and for his people. He gathers the lambs in his arms, and he carries them close to his heart. He gently leads those that have young. So he leads his people, he leads parents, he leads families, he leads us all. We're going to go to Yochanan and John chapter 1 and verse 1 through 14. In Yochanan, we read, let me see if I can find, I guess we'll do King James, not a huge deal. Okay, so TikTok's making me do some sort of verification here. I apologize. I guess I got to click objects that have the same shape, I suppose. Select two objects that are the same shape. Wow. Okay, well, TikTok isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing. So we're going to go to John 1:1. It says, in the beginning was the Word, the Torah, the scriptures, the Tanakh. Elohim had it. Because it says, and the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. No trying to go around this, no trying to do Babylonian talk, bouncing around. It says the same was in the beginning with Elohim. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in the darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. There was a man sent from Elohim, as it talked about in just this Isaiah passage, whose name was John. The same came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all men through him might believe, or in many cases, just better to say, to walk faithfully. He was not that light. So he himself, John, was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. He made a way in the wilderness. That was the true light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made by him. So the world was made by Yeshua accompanying the Father. And the world knew him not, because the world had not seen Elohim up to this point. There was no mass manifestation. He came unto his own. Okay, so Elohim came down unto his own, and his own received him not. So he's the shepherd. He came down to try to find his sheep, and many of them didn't receive him. And the ones who did, they heard and obeyed his voice. We'll see that as we go more through John in our later Torah portions. It says, but as many as received him, to them he gave power to become the sons of Elohim. So we see that the sons of Elohim can have different definitions. In Genesis, it applies to angelic beings. And in the Gospels, we see humans referred to as the sons of Elohim, or in other words, the offspring of Elohim. Even though he has no literal blood offspring, so to speak, you are his offspring through obedience, just like you are for Hasatan, or the devil, or the adversary. It says, which were born. So if we believe on his name, we can be saved. Which were born not of blood, nor the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of Elohim. So Yahweh Elohim doesn't care about the flesh. He doesn't care about the blood. He also doesn't care about the devices and the plans of other men. He will incorporate people who want to walk faithfully. And then it says, and the word. So the word was equated to Elohim in verse 1. And the word was made flesh. So Elohim was made flesh through virgin birth conception, and dwelt among us. And we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace, or full of favor and truth. So right here, John 1, Yeshua is indeed more than a human. He is fully human, fully fully human, fully God. And my live here is going to end. I may have to restart it over here on TikTok. I apologize for the inconvenience. We're going to go to Matthew chapter 22 and verse 30. So we saw that the beings from heaven left their dwelling and did what was not appropriate in the sight of Yah, because he had a rule that said they could not do that. But in Matthew chapter 22 and verse 30, we see from Yeshua, at the resurrection, when we come alive again, people will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They will be like the angels in heaven. And let me just restart this live. Guys, I have two lives going on, so I'm sorry. So what we see from Matthew chapter 22 is that there will be no marriage in the kingdom, potentially. And we don't even know if people will have a gender. I mean, because gender is the real reason. It's the real fuel behind marriage. If you're a man and a woman, you come together and you're complements. The key fits the lock. But in the kingdom, we see that we're going to be just like the angels who are not supposed to be mating. So this could either be a prohibition on mating, or the more likely outcome is that there may not be a specific dichotomy of male and female any longer. And so let's go to Jude, because Jude will tell us a little bit more about what these beings actually did. these angelic beings that had sinned. So, and Peter Kepha tells us a little bit too. So after these two, I'm going to wrap up. Contention for the faith. Oh, here we go. Though you already know all this, so this is written to the people of Elohim, faithful to the Torah, verse 5. Jude verse 5. I want to remind you that that Elohim or Yahweh at one time delivered his people out of Egypt, but later destroyed those who did not believe. And the angels, the messengers, who did not keep their positions of authority but abandoned their proper dwelling, these he has kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains for judgment on the great day. The angelic beings left their realm and they came into humanity. And so he said in the same way, Sodom and Gomorrah, they had similar perversion, that their perversion was the same. Shalom, shalom. And so I think in Peter, we also have a passage about the angels leaving their place. So here we go. In 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 4, it says, for Elohim did not spare the angels when they sinned, but sent them to Sheol, or just this is a place of death under the ground, putting them in chains of darkness to be held for judgment. And then it says, of course, so this is like kind of rhetorical, Peter making a point here. If he condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, kind of same theme here. And if he rescued Lot. So it's just talking about how he's going to rescue the righteous. He's going to rescue the godly from trials, and he's going to hold the unrighteous for punishment. So he's going to be a God of justice. Elohim is a God of justice from Genesis to Revelation, and even now that we don't have people necessarily, writing any new scriptures. I mean, because we have the scriptures. It's the front of the book. Genesis to Malachi, we have that. The Brit Hadashah acts as an expansion, I would say, in a sense, another set of writings that gives us more clarification and detail about how to walk those things out. So I think that's going to wrap up my Torah portion for today. Maybe we need some reviews. Do we want to continue this series? I think the answer is yes. And so we'll go ahead and we'll see you next week. And I hope everybody has a blessed evening. Thank you very much.